Good evening and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Here's what's coming up. President Trump gives what he calls the last warning to Hamas to release all of the hostages in Gaza. The president writing on X that he'll send Israel everything it needs to finish the job. And the mayors of sanctuary cities testifying before Congress. Republican lawmakers accusing them of violating federal law and impeding immigration enforcement. We'll bring you the key takeaways from the hearing. And following Trump's address to a joint session of Congress last night, Democratic lawmakers are strategizing on how to oppose his legislative agenda.
This is Capitol Report, live from our global headquarters in our nation's capital. Here's Steve Lance.
President Trump issuing a final warning to Hamas. He's also doubling down on tariffs on Canada while granting exemptions to U.S. automakers. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent in studio. Good evening, Iris. So talk to us. What is the latest from the Trump White House today?
Sure, Steve. So today, President Trump issued a new ultimatum to Hamas terrorists, writing on Truth Social that, quote, "This is your last warning for the leadership. Now is the time to leave Gaza while you still have a chance. Release the hostages now or there will be hell to pay later." And Trump further hinted at military action, saying that he's going to send Israel everything it needs to finish the job if Hamas don't listen. It comes as the White House just confirmed to us today that the administration has been in direct talks with Hamas, which is actually a first given the long-standing tradition for the U.S. administration to not engage in direct talks with terrorists. But the White House press secretary defended that action, saying that the president believes is in the best interest of the American people. And also comes after President Trump actually earlier today met with some of the released hostages from Gaza. And the White House told us that that conversation went very well with the Hamas kept hostages, thanking President Trump for what he's been doing to release the rest of the hostages. And today there's another meeting at the White House that really caught attention today. President Trump met with the boy that was in the spotlight at his joint session speech last night. His name is DJ Daniel, a Texas boy with brain cancer who really fought that cancer and had the dream of becoming a police officer. We know that President Trump actually made him a special agent of the Secret Service last night, and here's part of that moment today in the Oval Office. Watch.
What a good-looking family, huh?
There's one more thing I got for you, a big hug.
Okay, good. That's very nice. Look at that family you got, huh?
And in other news today, President Trump today also granted a 1-month exemption for car makers, especially after his tariffs on both Mexico and Canada just went into effect yesterday. The White House told us that that's, of course, to help these car makers stay economically not affected. And the White House also told us that the ultimate goal for President Trump to give them more time is for them to ultimately shift their production gradually to the U.S. Here's what she said. Watch.
He told them that they should get on it, start investing, start moving, shift production here to the United States of America, where they will pay no tariff. That's the ultimate goal.
And the president actually also held calls with the CEOs of the big three automakers, of course, talking to them about how tariffs will impact their industries and listening to their requests. And this action today was made at their request. And also the White House today doubled down, meanwhile, on the tariffs on China, with the White House press secretary emphasizing that China has been playing a big role in allowing fentanyl to go into the U.S. And she also pushed back against China's narrative that the U.S. is using fentanyl as an excuse to impose tariffs. Caroline Levitt said that China has been benefiting and really making money from that fentanyl trade, adding that it's completely justified for the White House to impose such tariffs. Here's what she said today. Watch.
They finally have a president who is standing up to both Canada and Mexico, and most importantly, to China as well. The president added an additional 10% tariff on China because this deadly poison is being produced in that country. It's being distributed through our neighbors, and there needs to be consequences for that, period.
And on Ukraine, we know that President Trump last night read that letter from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying that he's now ready for further peace talks and to sign that minerals deal. But so far, the White House has not announced when a potential signing will be. But a press secretary did tell us today that, though, the high officials in the administration, including National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, actually is in talks with his counterparts to further negotiations. Steve.
NTD's Iris Tao, thank you for that update.
Of course.
And the mayor of 4 major cities testifying before Congress on the status of their so-called sanctuary cities. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details on the contentious back and forth.
Do you solemnly swear?
The mayors of New York City, Boston, Chicago, and Denver testifying before a contentious Congress. Congressman James Comer, chair of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, launched an investigation into their cities, highlighting increasing reports of crimes committed by illegal border crossers. He says that their sanctuary laws protect criminals.
We cannot let pro-criminal, alien policies in obstructionist sanctuary cities continue to endanger American communities and the safety of federal immigration enforcement officers.
The mayors say that they're not violating any federal laws, and some say that working with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, means that illegal immigrants who are victims of crimes won't come forward for fear of retaliation, thereby creating a safe haven for their aggressors.
If an undocumented individual witnesses a crime but is afraid to call 911 for fear of being turned over to federal authorities, criminals will roam free.
U.S. Border Czar Tom Homan says that sanctuary cities prevent illegal immigrants from being turned over to ICE even when they're in jail.
So sanctuary cities want to keep locking us out of jails. They force us into the neighborhood to find the bad guy.
So you're saying publicly today you will turn that alien over to ICE in a safe place like a jail and not turn him out on the street and say, here you go, ICE, good luck. You will turn that criminal over to ICE.
With a criminal warrant, as we have done for 40 years.
Should that criminal be turned over to ICE?
With a criminal warrant, they are subject to the federal laws, and that includes deportation.
This comes as the DOJ has launched lawsuits against the states of New York, Illinois, and the city of Chicago for their sanctuary policies. One example is New York's Green Light Law, which allows illegal immigrants to obtain driver's licenses. Attorney General Pam Bondi is suing the state, alleging that this law blocks immigration enforcement officers from accessing that information. Federal law prohibits state and local officials from blocking immigration officers from accessing individual citizenship status. So it remains to be seen if sanctuary laws violate federal laws by protecting illegal immigrants from being arrested by ICE. Jack Bradley, NTD News.
And Vice President J.D. Vance today taking a trip down to the U.S.-Mexico border, joined by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard. Vance touted the Trump administration's record on immigration. Joining us now live to assess is Hector Garza, Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council. Hector, welcome to the program. Before we get into the first question I have for you, I want to quickly play a soundbite from the Vice President's speech earlier. Let's play the clip.
And I will say that the most heartening message that I take away from my visit here at the Texas border is the number of Border Patrol agents who have come up to me and said thank you, or said because of this, we've cut the number of border crossings from 1,500 a day to 30 a day. Or the people who have come up and said we've seen a reduction in 85% of the number of people who are dying at the American southern border.
Hector, if you could, give us your reaction to this statement. It sounds like it's addressing you and the people that you serve. Walk us through the changes that are happening there under President Trump's leadership.
So there are amazing changes that are happening on the border thanks to President Trump. Our president, Paul Perez, with the National Border Patrol Council, was present today in Eagle Pass and did have conversations with Vice President Vance. And the rhetoric and the information that's coming from all of our agents is that the border is much more secure. We're now able to focus on these dangerous criminals that are bringing dangerous drugs across. We're no longer seeing those asylum seekers that were basically abusing the asylum system. Now, under President Trump, we're able to actually focus on the real mission of border security. We also are very grateful for the Department of Defense. They've been doing an amazing job, bringing amazing technology that's going to help us battle the cartels on the border.
And earlier today, Hector, DNI Chief Tulsi Gabbard spoke about the number of criminal illegal immigrants coming through the border. Let's take a listen.
From Central Asia, there were over 4,000 people who came across our borders using an ISIS-affiliated network. You may remember in some of the news, a little over 100 of those people were arrested in 2024. Of those who were arrested, only 8 were either deported or remained in custody. Only 8. The rest of them were released back into our country.
How many of these criminals are still at large in the United States, and what kind of measures can this administration take to root them out?
So one of the first things is that under the Biden administration, we were actually identifying a lot of these criminal aliens that had potential ties to terrorism. And unfortunately, under the Biden administration, these people were just let go to roam free in our community. To this day, most of those people are still in the United States. So what we need to do is that we need to continue to work with ICE and local law enforcement to make sure that we know where these people are at. We can apprehend them and deport them, or even incarcerate them if we can't deport them to their countries. But ICE is right now under Tom Homan is doing a great job in trying to find some of these people. But those threats are out there, and that's why we cannot let the foot off the pedal. We need to continue moving forward with Tom Homan and under the leadership of President Trump.
Meanwhile, several sanctuary city mayors today testifying on Capitol Hill in front of the Oversight Committee. There were several interesting moments. Here's one of them.
That's one of the topics of this conversation. That's one of the problems we've heard from Tom Homan and from the Homeland Security is that in your cities, when someone's apprehended for a crime, and ICE is now with this new federal policy wanting to come in and deport the criminal alien, that you will not cooperate with ICE.
So how can we ensure that all cities comply with federal law enforcement and ICE in securing these criminal illegal immigrants? And what do you expect will happen with these sanctuary cities?
So these mayors are making it very difficult for federal law enforcement officers to actually enforce immigration law and for us to actually be able to apprehend and deport some of these criminal illegal aliens. We have to keep in mind that these aliens that are landing in these jails like in New York, these are criminal aliens. These are people that have committed crimes in these cities, in these towns, and now they're not being turned over to ICE. As immigration officers will submit detainers, and before we know it, these criminals are being let loose in the community, usually to go commit more crimes. So what we need to do is that if these sanctuary cities are not cooperating with ICE, with Border Patrol, and with federal law enforcement, I think we need to follow the Tom Homan plan and the path forward that he's already set. And that is for us to increase the ICE presence, the Border Patrol presence in the sanctuary cities. Now that becomes a little bit more dangerous for our officers. But at this point, if these sanctuary cities are blocking federal law enforcement, we're just going to have to send more resources, more manpower to these municipalities to find those illegal aliens.
And lastly, here's a soundbite earlier from Congressman Byron Donalds.
And there were these buses that were coming to the detention facility, and they were picking up 30 kids, 50 kids at random, walking out of the facility. Border agents told me, as a member of Congress, that you're not allowed to question the bus driver. And so what was occurring under the Biden administration is that they were busing unaccompanied minors all across the United States.
I guess my first question is this true? And if so, why was it happening? And what can officials do now to try to track these children?
So there were a lot of horrible things that were happening under the Biden administration. One of the things is that our Border Patrol agents were not allowed to conduct in-depth investigations or interviews of these children to try to figure out where they were coming from. The other thing is that they were being handed off to these sponsors. They were also being handed off to some of these non-governmental organizations. And that's where a lot of the control was lost. We did not know who they were going to. The sponsors were not actually tracked or vetted. So yes, what that congressman described there was happening under the Biden administration. And now it's going to take a lot of work for federal law enforcement and just law enforcement in general to be able to track these kids. These kids are more than likely being trafficked right now, and they're being treated in a way that the kids should not be treated. It's very unfortunate, but we've got a lot of work to do on the law enforcement side.
Hector Garza, really appreciate your insights. Thank you. And Democratic lawmakers set their strategy to oppose Trump's legislative agenda. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Martinez, has more.
And what we all decided was we're going to focus our energy on the 6 Republican Congress members from New York, because they hold the key to stopping these horrible policies. As you know, in the House, all you need 1 or 2. In the Senate, you need 3 or 4.
After President Trump's speech, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer set the tone of the opposition that Democratic lawmakers will have against the president's agenda, while Republican New York lawmakers are wary of the impacts that tariffs and government spending cuts could have on their constituents.
We are going to work through the process. I've been very clear. I'm not cutting benefits to Medicaid recipients. The president's been very clear. But this process will play itself out.
We want to make sure that we're doing things with a scalpel and not a sledgehammer. I've had concerns with what happened last week when the CDC saw this across the board cut, and it impacted the 9/11 first responders in my district. That is a perfect example of unintended consequences that can occur when you do things in a rash manner.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries defended the conduct of House Democrats during the president's speech, while Republican lawmakers moved quickly to censor Congressman Al Green for his conduct during the joint session of Congress.
Far-right extremists are desperately trying to jam their reckless budget down the throats of the American people. They want us to step back. House Democrats will continue to fight back.
So I'm not angry with the Speaker. I'm not angry with the officers. I'm not upset with the members who are going to bring the motions or resolution for sanction. I will suffer the consequences.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that Representative Al Green be censured. Representative Al Green forthwith present himself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure, and Representative Al Green be censured with the public reading of this resolution by the Speaker.
Lawmakers held a minute of silence on the House floor in commemoration of the passing of freshman Congressman and former Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner. Congressman Turner had participated in Tuesday night's joint session of Congress, but passed away soon after a medical emergency. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
And coming up, following President Trump's joint address to Congress, we hear from everyday Americans about his achievements and upcoming priorities. Lawmakers and business leaders speaking out about China's unfair trade practices and tariff circumvention, and what lawmakers can do to stop it. That and more when we return.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It is like literally having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medication to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and many more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online in minutes and save $45. Your kit, with prescriptions to treat common and life-saving illnesses, is rushed to your door. Visit twc.health/NTD. That's twc.health/NTD.
Just like all of you, I had problems sleeping. I had tried every pillow out there and nothing worked. I'd flip-flop all night, use my arm for support, and fall asleep, or I'd wake up with a sore neck or maybe a headache. Well, quality sleep comes from keeping your neck straight at night. You have to fill in that space between your head and your bed. That's why I invented MyPillow. MyPillow's patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs, and it doesn't matter if you sleep on your back, stomach, side, or any combination of all three.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night, and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get Classic King MyPillows for only $19.98. Queen size just $18.98. Standard Classic MyPillows only $14.98. That's right, only $14.98. Plus all orders $75 or more ship absolutely free.
And welcome back to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. So what do everyday Americans say the biggest accomplishments of Trump's first 6 weeks in office might be? And what do they want to see from the president next? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall right here in D.C. to survey the folks.
What stood out to you the most in President Trump's second term so far?
That he's gotten a lot done in a short amount of time, right? So many things that he promised he would do, he's already cracking down on, and the time he spends with the reporters explaining everything.
I really think he's got an impressive cabinet that he's put together, and it's a cabinet that really looks like it's built to get things done.
From his first term, to the second term, he has hit the ground running, and he has his cabinet members that he is putting in place.
The 200 special orders he's put out already, that's taken care of a lot of crap that we needed to get rid of.
Well, the border crossings are really, really good. That's an amazing thing, what's happening there. And then hopefully we're close to peace in not only the Middle East, but also the Ukraine-Russia war.
I think it's going a little too fast, especially with the DOGE committee. Letting too many people go too fast. I'm not sure if they really studied every employee's real job and if it's needed for the country.
My sister lost her job, and she's one of the best plant geneticists on the planet. She's a professor for UC Davis, and her purview falls under the USDA.
Going forward, what should be President Trump's next priority?
The biggest thing is protecting our borders.
The American people should be his priority because we're the ones that put him there.
I feel like we don't need to be buying oil from countries that are trying to kill us. So it'd be good if we drilled our own oil.
The economy, but if the Democrats will allow us to do what we need to do in the economy, I think the inflation rate will come down.
I do hope that he makes a move so people can see inflation going down.
We're farmers, and input prices are a major concern for us, as well as the commodity prices for what we're selling. And so, of course, we like to keep an eye on that. That's how we make our living.
Uniting the country, I still think that's what it comes down to. There's too much division in the country. I'm praying for the president. I'm praying for the country. I didn't vote for him, but I'm still optimistic and hopeful he could unite us.
Partisan bill is taking aim at China's unfair trade practices. Joining me now are two advocates of the bill being directly impacted by the CCP's unfair trade practices. David Rashid is the executive chairman at Plews and Edelman, and Brad Mueller is the vice president of corporate communications at Charlotte Pipe and Foundry. Brad Mueller, David Rashid, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's great to have you both. You were actually on Capitol Hill today with the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. The topic of the conference, the press conference that you guys were at, was about China's trade violations. If you could, Brad, talk to us about what the implications are and how concerning this is.
Yeah, Steve, for too long, our trading partners, both friend and foe, have taken advantage of America's markets and this notion of free trade. Free trade really doesn't exist. Countries are always going to pursue their own self-interest, and for too long we've been taken advantage of. And it's time to bring jobs back to America and bring manufacturing back to America. And I think the President and the Congress are starting to look at ways to do that.
And David, you have firsthand experience in seeing how this is actually done. How concerned were the lawmakers when you first brought this to their attention, and what is the way to resolve it?
Yeah, so the lawmakers were aware, but I think every news story has a nuance to it. I think, I tried to follow the system. So I went to the Department of Justice and filed a False Claims Act. I went to Customs and Border Protection. I filed an allegation against a competitor who was transshipping into this country. And I had beautiful evidence, perfect evidence. And unfortunately, none of those agencies did anything for me. So when I went to the Select Committee, that was my last straw. I went to my congressman, Darren LaHood, who was an amazing advocate for us. And he invited us to go testify at the Select Committee on China. They had a hearing in Wisconsin. And when I went, I thought, I need to take to them a solution, not just my problem. And so I had found a group called the Trade Fraud Task Force, which was a 1 or 2 person operation inside the Department of Justice on the civil side, who had tried to help me out, but they also got stuck in the system. And so I talked to them about what they did and how important their work was and how they needed to really focus on growing that. And they did their own investigation, and what they realized was this was, in fact, a potential solution. And that, eventually converted into the bill that we were promoting today. So they were frustrated, but too looking for a solution. And by interviewing people like me, people like Bradford, they learned more, and based on that, they took action that turned into this bill that we're introducing today.
What is in this bill? Does it have teeth to actually get done what you're looking to see?
It does. I think when we talk about teeth, it allows the criminal division of the DOJ to go after people who commit trade crime and put them in jail. And a criminal process takes a lot less time than a civil process. So when you're dealing with a civil process, you can be dealing with 5, 7, 10 years between making the allegation and actually having that person pay. And in that period of time, they can shut down their company and move. So it's very ineffective. Criminal is a lot more effective. So the first thing that this bill does is it's suggesting that, or it's advocating for the fact that this trade crime unit be in the criminal division of the DOJ versus the civil division. 2, it adds resources. And so what this bill does is it mandates a yearly reporting to the Attorney General and to Congress as to the effectiveness of their actions. So it puts resources in place, it allows them to go after these people criminally, and it requires them to report on an annual basis, the outcomes of their work, which is so critical.
Brad, I want to get your thoughts. President Trump just increasing tariffs on China. What do you say to that argument that tariffs are a tax on the American people?
Well, I think what we saw, Steve, in the first Trump administration when he imposed tariffs, they proved to not be inflationary. You remember, inflation was 1.9% when President Trump left office. I think there will be short-term pain, and there is a little bit of uncertainty, and markets have reacted negatively. But the long-term gain from ending the unfair trade practices that drive our American manufacturing jobs overseas is far better for America than a little bit of short-term uncertainty in markets and trade.
Brad Mueller, David Rashid, really appreciate you both.
Thanks,
Thank
Steve.
you.
Dangerous rhetoric coming from the Chinese Communist Party today. Here's what the embassy posted on X. Quote, "If war is what the U.S. wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we are ready to fight till the end." The CCP put out the same line in a statement on Tuesday. It says it will increase defense spending by more than 7% this year. And the Justice Department is charging 12 Chinese hackers and intelligence officials with Beijing-backed espionage activities. Victims include several U.S. governmental agencies, several Asian countries' foreign ministries, a New York-based newspaper that publishes critiques of the Chinese Communist Party, and a religious group based in the United States. A House committee analyzing the ongoing threats the Chinese Communist Party poses to American infrastructure through cyber attacks and espionage. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has more from the nation's capital.
As we speak, the Chinese Communist Party is waging a full-scale cyber war against the American people.
The bipartisan House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party had a hearing to talk about what intelligence officials are saying about the current threats from the Communist Party in regards to cybersecurity, as well as what the U.S. can do to defend against it. One message that the committee wanted to get across is that this is just one area where the CCP is waging warfare against the U.S. However, it is one area that can do a lot of damage. Chair Molinar said in his opening statement that CCP's hackers have targeted things like water treatment plants, power grids that power homes, as well as even hospitals. Molinar gave two recent examples of big cyber attacks from Chinese hackers, one that targeted telecommunications companies like AT&T and Verizon, where they were able to gain access to millions of phones, gaining access to sensitive data from those users, as well as listening into conversations pretty much at will. And this ranged from, your everyday person up to even the president and vice president. He also brought up another recent example where Chinese hackers targeted critical infrastructure in the U.S., gaining access to, like I mentioned earlier, water treatment plants, power grids, things like that. And intelligence officials are telling them that the CCP plans to kind of use these whenever they feel they need to, in case there's some kind of conflict, perhaps something to do with Taiwan or anything else that they deem worthy to activate these vulnerabilities.
It is clear Xi Jinping's goal is to sabotage our way of life when the time is right for his regime. We must understand that this isn't just a cyber threat. This is part of the CCP's larger strategy to destroy the American way of life.
And Chair Molinar continued saying, quote, the CCP views all forms of warfare, cyber, economic, ideological, and military as different tools to achieve the same goal, global domination through the defeat of its enemies. As far as what the U.S. can do to deter and defend against it, Ranking Member Krishnamurthy brought up some solutions to address the weaknesses from the two most recent major cyber attacks, as well as the U.S. increasing the cyber talent workforce, both in the government and the private sector. And he also really wanted to emphasize that the U.S. needs to start holding the CCP accountable when these attacks happen.
It means imposing costs on the CCP each time they attack us. When Xi Jinping decides whether to launch another attack, he needs to ask himself whether the costs are worth the benefits.
These aren't just cyber criminals. These aren't just asymmetrical threats. These are real planned threat actors who have made a decision and orchestrated attacks against the United States, who largely have not been held accountable by either Republican or Democratic administrations.
One common message the committee has been relaying is that the CCP is dead set on using any means possible to achieve their goal of dominating the world, and they have really not shown any sign of wanting to peacefully coexist. Reporting on Capitol Hill, Jason Blair, NTD News.
The Global Human Rights Defense today condemning the ongoing atrocity of forced organ harvesting in mainland China.
Global Human Rights Defense expresses grave concern over the ongoing crime of forced organ harvesting in China, particularly targeting Falun Gong practitioners and other persecuted groups. These state-sanctioned atrocities have been occurring since 1999, with victims subjected to involuntary medical tests, blood screenings, and organ extractions, often resulting in death.
Falun Gong is a traditional Chinese spiritual practice based on the core teachings of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. In July 1999, the group became the target of a nationwide persecution campaign inside of China. Millions of practitioners are facing incarceration, torture, and even death at the hands of CCP authorities. State Department reports suggest an untold number of them were killed on demand to supply the regime's organ transplant market. Today, the CCP's forced organ harvesting has been extended to other prisoners of conscience, including Uyghurs, Tibetans, and Christians. The Global Human Rights Defense is urging governments worldwide to stand by the Falun Gong community and hold perpetrators accountable. And coming up, the U.S. pausing intelligence sharing with Ukraine, a move that limits Ukraine's ability to target Russian forces. Meanwhile, Russia says future talks with the U.S. will include discussions on Iran's nuclear program. And is Zelensky's letter to President Trump a sign of renewed peace talks? We'll discuss this and Trump's joint address with a retired U.S. Army officer, Robert McGinnis. That and more when we return.
Being a cowboy, I don't know anything different from when I was 3 or 4 years old. I did tough things. I thought everybody needed to do tough things, and if you didn't, I didn't have time for it. I had a very successful career at a very young age, and life was fast. I was preparing physically. I wasn't doing anything mentally on the inside. And then I got hurt. I wanted to be better as a person, and I really dug into mental health. I start my day with 20-minute workouts. I live life 8 seconds at a time. Horses are so therapeutic. They know what you're feeling. When you're nervous, they're nervous. You won't say it back, but we're pals. I take a lot of responsibility in taking care of my kids, my family, being there for them. You're gonna have tough days. Everybody does. Find a place to stop and just breathe. Love your mind.
And welcome back to the Capitol Report. I'm Steve Lance. The United States has paused intel sharing with Ukraine, a move that limits Ukraine's ability to target Russian forces. This following Monday's halt on military aid. Meanwhile, Russia says future talks with the U.S. will include discussions on Iran's nuclear program. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has the story.
CIA Director John Ratcliffe on Wednesday said the U.S. has halted intelligence sharing with Ukraine. The move could seriously hamper the Ukrainian military's ability to target Russian forces. U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz told reporters Wednesday morning.
We have taken a step back and are pausing and reviewing all aspects of this relationship.
Since the start of the war in 2022, the U.S. has provided Ukraine with significant intelligence, including critical information its military needs for targeting purposes. Waltz also said the U.S. was actively engaged in talks with Ukraine on a minerals deal and a potential peace deal with Russia.
I think we're going to see movement in very short order.
Waltz, in an interview with Fox and Friends, said President Trump will consider restoring military aid to Ukraine if peace talks are arranged and confidence-building measures are taken. Trump halted the aid on Monday. On Tuesday night, Trump said he had received a letter from Ukrainian President Zelensky that expressed willingness to come to the negotiating table. Waltz said officials were in discussions over a date, location, and negotiating team that would lead to an end to the war, and are already talking about confidence-building measures to then take to the Russians. The Kremlin on Wednesday said that future talks between Russia and the United States would include discussion on Iran's nuclear program, a subject spokesman Dmitry Peskov said had been touched upon in an initial round of US-Russia talks last month.
Russia's position is that the issue of Iran's nuclear dossier needs to be solved only through political and diplomatic means. In our view, there is potential for it.
Trump last month restored his maximum pressure campaign on Iran, which includes efforts to drive its oil exports down to zero in order to stop Tehran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Iran denies any such intention. Russia has deepened its ties with the Islamic Republic since the start of the Ukraine war and signed a strategic cooperation treaty with Iran in January. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
And Zelensky's chief of staff wrote on X today that he and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz discussed the next steps toward a just and lasting peace, adding that they've scheduled a meeting for the two sides in the near future. And next, we break down the latest on the Ukraine minerals deal with retired U.S. Army officer Robert McGinnis, author of the newly released Preparing for World War III a global conflict that redefines tomorrow. Colonel Robert McGinnis, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you with us, Colonel. I want to play a clip from President Trump's address to the joint session of Congress last night and get your thoughts.
Earlier today, I received an important letter from President Zelensky of Ukraine. The letter reads, Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. We do really value how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence. Regarding the agreement on minerals and security, Ukraine is ready to sign it at any time that is convenient for you.
Colonel, does this mean that a peace deal could be imminent? And where do things stand right now from your perspective?
Yeah, evidently after the drama on Friday of last week, Zelensky was back in Kyiv, and somebody took him to the woodshed and said, look, the $175 billion the United States has given us has kept us in this fight. We can't diss them. We need to cooperate with them. And so he sends this letter to the president, or at least his message. This leaves us not in a peace treaty. What this is the mineral deal is really a backdoor way of providing Ukraine a sort of a security guarantee. In other words, if American companies are on the eastern edge of Ukraine, we're going to guarantee their security along with the Ukrainians, and the Russians will understand that. It also provides leverage when talking to Putin. Putin has a very clear agenda here. He wants to control what Ukraine becomes, if anything other than what he has in mind. And he wants to dictate to a certain degree the security arrangements, as well as keeping them out of NATO and of course, keeping them under his fold. So there are a host of things that are in Putin's mind. And of course, Mr. Trump, I think, is the only one that can get this deal done.
To your point, President Trump says that ending wars requires engaging both sides. Does, despite criticism of his approach, is it necessary to bring Russia to the table and negotiate this deal in a sort of a mindset of a Reagan-esque trust but verify?
Well, you do need to trust but verify. Reagan was correct there in dealing with the Russians, who, of course, he had plenty of engagements with Gorbachev and others. The reality is that if you don't have the Russians at the table early on, then, of course, as the invaders that triggered this back in February 22, then you're not going to be able to really hammer out a peace deal. Now, I don't think that this is going to be the peace deal that necessarily is going to be pleasing to Kyiv, because they're probably going to have to give up something. The Russians likely will have to give up something as well, at least temporarily. And so Mr. Trump is trying to really, ultimately, and you heard this in the White House the other day, he wants something more grander than just a peace deal here. He wants to separate the Russians from the Chinese, who have been, of course, a backer of this war.
I want to play you another clip from the president's speech last night.
I'm asking Congress to fund a state-of-the-art Golden Dome missile defense shield to protect our homeland, all made in the USA.
What do you make of this proposal, and how, besides the obvious, will this strengthen our national defense? And how necessary is it?
Well, we're vulnerable, different than Israel. Of course, the president likes to call it an iron dome. Israel is 440 times smaller than the U.S. Our threat would come from intercontinental ballistic missiles and from cruise missiles launched from ships as well as submarines. And so it's a very different threat that we face than Israel, which faces, Hezbollah, Hamas, and of course Iran using ballistic missiles from a long way away. So our defense has to be different. Now we have anti-ballistic missiles capabilities at Fort Greely, Alaska, as well as Vandenberg Air Force Base. We have them, SM-3s aboard Aegis freighters. We have it elsewhere, but it's a combination of things. We typically do not have an iron dome over the United States in its critical areas. That if we had what the Israelis have and multi-layered across the entire United States, it'd be incredibly expensive. However, like the Star Wars thing that President Reagan put together, that really caused the crumbling of the Soviet Union back in 89 and 90. What we really probably will put together is something similar to the technologies of using sensors in space and coordinating them with not only ground-based anti-ballistic missile systems, but we're looking at direct, really lasers, direct energy weapon systems that we're working on, and a variety of other things. So, we have the technology. We're moving toward it. I know the president's going to be told there are limitations. Probably what we'll do is prioritize a variety of targets that we're sensitive about here in the United States, like Washington, D.C., and then we'll really bolster up our capability there. I think we're going to move in the right direction. We've already helped the Israelis. We have a lot of technology, and I think we can provide something much better than we currently have in the near future.
Retired Colonel Robert McGinnis, author of the new book, Preparing for World War III. Appreciate you sharing your perspective.
Thank you.
And coming up, we hear from Representative James Comer about why he says it's important to stand up and answer questions in his upbringing in the foothills of Appalachia. And severe storms, tornadoes, and blizzards sweeping across the country, leaving destruction in their wake. The latest on power outages, evacuations, and winter storm warnings when we return.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I received 2 stents in my arteries, stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. I have met so many survivors. Each of them tells a story that can be so helpful to women out there.
Everything was pretty good. It was a very happy life. I was given the diagnosis that I had peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is basically a pregnancy-induced heart failure. They told me my only chance was a heart transplant.
And the American Heart Association helped make that possible. Their research helped save me.
I think everyone should support the American Heart Association. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. You can be part of that very important work that the American Heart Association is doing to save lives everywhere. Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt that you can wear to show that you are helping save lives.
I'm grateful for just every day that I get with my children. I am very thankful for the American Heart Association.
Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love. Listen to your heart. The only reason I'm here today is because I did. So please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now. Join me as a monthly donor today and help save even more lives.
And welcome back to the Capitol Report. The Justice Department investigating the University of California for anti-Semitism under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The DOJ will investigate a potential pattern of discrimination against Jewish professors, staff, and employees at the University of California. Anti-Semitic protests and encampments broke out on university campuses across the country, including the UCLA, and captured Americans' attention last year. President Trump on Tuesday posted on Truth Social that he will stop all federal funding for any college, school, or university that allows illegal protests. And severe weather is impacting millions across the country, bringing deadly storms, tornadoes, and blizzard conditions. At least 3 lives have been lost, and NTD's Christina Corona has more.
Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves confirmed a 3rd storm-related death Wednesday, asking for prayers for the victim's family, stating, "Tragically, a 3rd fatality has been reported. Please pray for their family during this difficult time." 2 injuries were reported in Madison County and 4 were reported in Wayne County. 2 people died in Madison County, one from electrocution and another from a fallen tree. The Mississippi Emergency Management Agency reported a 3rd fatality in Clark County, where a woman was killed in her yard when a tree branch fell on her. Severe storms and tornadoes hit multiple states. An EF1 tornado damaged Ada, Oklahoma, one of at least 8 across Oklahoma, Texas, and Louisiana. Tornado warnings were issued in the Carolinas, Florida, and Virginia. Near Dallas, the storm's wind gusts collapsed a warehouse, tore roofs, and downed power lines. According to PowerOutage.us, by Wednesday morning, nearly 300,000 people lost power across 12 states, including 70,000 in Texas. The strong winds and dry vegetation also sparked wildfires across multiple areas in Texas. According to County Judge David Krebs, one blaze in San Patricio County near Corpus Christi destroyed at least 20 homes and structures. In Louisiana, powerful winds disrupted Mardi Gras. 2 EF1 tornadoes hit Caddo Parish, and several New Orleans parades were shortened or canceled, though celebrations continued. Blizzards brought whiteout conditions to Iowa, Minnesota, and Michigan with 70 miles per hour winds and over a foot of snow. The storm is expected to move out Thursday, but strong winds may still cause damage. Meanwhile, a Pacific storm is set to bring heavy rain and snow to the west. Christina Corona, NTD News.
And that is all we have for you this evening on the Capitol Report. For round-the-clock original coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live and download our NTD mobile app. From the nation's capital, I'm Steve Lance. Have a nice evening. See you back here tomorrow.